How's it going, Andrew?
Hey, Matt. So, we're back doing another podcast.
Yeah, I believe this is going to now be, episode 8?
Yeah, I think it's episode 8. So, how you been feeling about this whole podcast thing we've been doing?
And this has been an interesting journey. I feel like I'm starting to finally get more comfortable in front of a microphone. That took a little bit, and I feel like I'm starting to find like my voice and my podcast personality, if you will.
Wow.
I feel like we both are, honestly. Mm-hmm. It's starting to come together. Downloads are looking good. I know we did a shout out to our Brooklyn listeners last time, but we also have some in like Texas and Florida and
Louisiana, Ohio, Illinois.
Yep. Hopefully eventually the UK. Anybody wants to tell one of their friends in the UK to go ahead and listen to an episode. It would make Andrew very happy if we could check that off the list.
I just think it's funny that, I kind of thought the podcast it's very niche because we're focused in Wisconsin, but I do think a lot of these, taking a small slice of masonry is still an example of masonry universal because it's just one piece of the bigger puzzle. So I think it has an appeal to people all over, even if maybe on news and event, they're like, I don't need to know all that much. I think people still like to know what's going on around the world in masonry.
Well, and I agree. And I listen to On the Level with Fred and Chris, which is out of Florida. And a lot of times they'll talk about very specific Florida stuff. But it's interesting to hear what other jurisdictions and other lodges are doing. And you never know when something they're doing might inspire you to bring it to your lodge.
Yeah, all the different cultures. I mean, we have cultures within our state, but then there's even more dramatic culture differences when you travel around the country, too. And so it is kind of cool to get like a little slice of life of another, version of masonry. Not that it's, all that different, but there's still different ways people think about it or how they interact with it. Right. And use it in their areas, too. So that's always interesting for sure.
Yep, or different events and stuff that they're doing or education stuff that might be valuable for, you to potentially look at doing in your jurisdiction. So I think it's important, and I also think it makes the world of Freemasonry seem a little bit smaller, like bigger and smaller at the same time.
Yeah.
Before I started listening to podcasts and doing TikTok and interacting with brothers from other parts of the country, I was very much like, Wisconsin, Masonry lives in Wisconsin because that's where I live for me. And now that I know brothers from all over the country and all over the world, it's like, oh no, this really is a big thing. And it's like, you feel more connected to the craft as a whole when you start talking to those people that are in other jurisdictions and stuff like that and knowing what they're doing and what they think about stuff. And it just really kind of brings it all together.
Yeah, it makes us feel like one big happy family, one big Masonic family that's, worldwide. And it's cool in the way that you can be like, you almost feel like sometimes when you listen to a podcast, you're kind of pretending you're just hanging out with the people. You're like the third friend, like, my friends are talking. Me too. And so you're like, oh, I'm hanging out with my Florida Masons. This is fun. And you're like, this is cool. So I think that's definitely a fun part is sharing like the small slice of reality in Masonry. And it all feels like you're part of the same, multiverse of Masonry.
Right. Exactly. And on that note, we do have our social media up and running. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew on all 3 of those platforms. And eventually, hopefully here, if we ever do go to video for this thing, we're hoping to do a little TikTok content with clips from the show. So we have a placeholder page there, and obviously we're available to listen to anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yep. And it's fun because, we were talking recently on a podcast about social media, so I felt like as a podcast we probably should be active on all those to kind of show an example of how you can use it. And I've even been noticing, I don't know if some of our listeners have been taking our advice, but I've been seeing some more social media content coming out of Wisconsin. I saw that Waukesha Lodge is on TikTok now, and they're making some content.
Yep.
And so I think, hopefully we inspired some people to start trying to investigate and figure out cool ways to interact with this new tech or to get in front of, younger audiences and stuff like that.
Even if they hadn't heard the episode and they decided to go out and start doing TikTok without having heard our episode where we were kind of talking about that concept, it's good to know that other people are looking in that same direction too.
Yeah, that we're all kind of starting to think about it and try to find new ways to do it. And I think the only way we're going to learn is if lodges start trying it out, learning lessons, and then other lodges can see that stuff and go, oh, maybe I can do something similar. And, it just kind of helps us all, kind of learn to navigate this wild, wild world we live in.
Right. And let's show people the good works we do and dispel all the myths and conspiracy theories about Freemasonry by showing them the good works we do.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. But, so check us out on social media. Also, don't forget, you can always email us at timeforfellowship@gmail.com. Feedback, comments, any events you want us to post, talk about, plug, just let us know.
timeforfellowship@gmail.com. Shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, well, let's kick this episode off because today we're going to be talking about the Fellowcraft charge.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right, so let's examine the Fellowcraft charge. And I was excited for this episode because this is actually the first charge I learned, but also one of my favorite ones because I think it's all very applied.
It is. The Fellowcraft degree has a lot of information in it to unpack, and just like all the rest of them, so does the charge, and just like all the rest, that happens at the end.
What's funny about the Fellowcraft degree and the charge in general is I feel like this is like it's like the degree that no one ever cares about as much when they're going through the degrees, but it's like a degree for Masons after they've gone through the degrees, and I feel like the second time you see a Fellowcraft one, you're like, oh, you know what? Because I think it kind of gets lost in the shuffle of the first one, you're like, whoa, this is all new. The second one, you're like, this is kind of more. And then the third one's so interesting and flashy that you're like, oh. And then you come back to the Fellowcraft and you're like, there's a lot of good stuff in this bad boy.
There's a lot of good stuff in the Fellowcraft degree.
It kind of tells you what to do. It's like, how do you do Mason stuff? Or how to improve in Masonry.
Right, how to improve in Masonry and, some of the things maybe you haven't thought about Masonry at that point. And I think it's important that it not be overlooked. If you're going to go back and study one of the degrees and take lessons out of it, the Fellowcraft is potentially the most important of them. And, like we said about the first charge, we feel like it's undervalued for the content that's in it, and it's no different for the Fellowcraft charge.
Yeah, and I think this charge, let's start with the first section of this charge. So we kind of went through and we were talking about it, and we picked some parts that I think are kind of worth unpacking. So can you read the portion about the internal and external for me, please?
The internal and not the external qualifications of a man are what Masonry regards. So right there, you're off to guess what, guys? It doesn't matter if you have khakis and a polo on, or a $50 suit, or a $150 suit, or a $1,000 tuxedo. That don't matter.
It really just matters who you are as a person and what you do as a Mason. And I think that's a really good reminder to have right at the start of your degree. Because when you become a Fellowcraft, you're actually kind of like when you're an entered apprentice, basically in the nicest way, a lot of the degree is like, don't say stuff. Like a lot of it's like, shut your mouth. And you're like, okay. So it's basically like, hey, we're going to give you more trust as you become a higher degree. And in this degree, we want to make sure that now you're going to have actual responsibilities as a Mason. The obligation includes more tasks and things you will and won't do. And in this one, it's saying, hey, when you're working with people, I don't want you to judge them by their looks. I don't want you to judge them by their socioeconomic class. I don't care if they have tattoos. What are they a good man? And we should treat them based on what we're working on is internal.
Exactly. And, it speaks to the universality of Freemasonry again with that, right?
Universality?
Yeah.
Universality. Yeah, don't worry. It's all about the internal, dude. I'm not worried about it.
That is an internal. Wait a minute. No. So it definitely speaks to that. I'm not going to try to say that word again because apparently I'm struggling today.
That's fine. I mess up every town name in Wisconsin, so we're allowed to do that.
We're getting even now here with that one. But I think it's important to understand that, we're not how do I want to say this? We're not, I don't care what you look like or what you do for a living. Let your actions speak for the type of person you are. And what you are going to do with that, right? Just like we accept men of any faith for that reason. This goes along that same principle of accepting men regardless of whether or not they have a nice suit, regardless of whether or not they're tattooed, accepting them for who they are and the good person that they are.
And you'll find that by treating the internal, which is what we aim to do as we are working on the internal portion of the man, it can still have good external benefits. Like you can actually show yourself in a very good external way, but you don't want to get, that's kind of the illusion in the matter. You don't want to get stuck on being like, I want to look like a Mason. You're like, great. It's like, I have 45 pins on my lapel. I look like a Mason. And you're like, that's cool. I mean, that's fun. It's cool. We can have things, but it's saying don't get lost in the sauce on that one and be too focused on the appearances, because it shouldn't really matter. Even if that can be something you want to look nicer, you want to, improve yourself and do all that stuff. That's great. But really at the heart of the matter is what are you doing to work on yourself internally? Right.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with, having nice suits and dressing nicely or, doing that kind of stuff. I enjoy having a nice suit. But I think what it's just saying is that don't focus on that, because that part doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, it kind of speaks to, meeting on the level, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're 22 years old and you can't afford to buy a nice suit yet. You meet on the level with the same guy down the way that, maybe does have the $1,000 tuxedo on.
Yep. And it's a good reminder, too, like now you bring up age, too. It's like it shouldn't even matter what age you are.
Right.
Like if you're a 22-year-old Mason, and, this always is a problem in lodges, is the seniority card, where sometimes, and not all the time, don't get me wrong, older members might be like, why would I care about this young guy's opinion? He doesn't know. I have more experience. I've been around more than that. It's like, well, now you're focusing on the external again. You're looking at his age. Maybe look at the content of what he's trying to teach. And you might find that you actually learn something, because if you're focused on thinking about like, well, I'm older, I'm wiser, I know more than him, you're actually focusing on something that's external. Whereas if you're just actually trying to give them the benefit of the doubt or try to actually examine the internal part, you might actually find you can learn stuff. And that goes both ways. Young people can look up and be like, well, this old guy is just so backwards. He's so old. It's like, well, stop looking at his age and actually listen to what he has to say, because there's a lot of wisdom there that you can gather too.
I'm glad you flipped that around, because I was going to do that if you didn't, because I think it's important on both sides, both for the younger members of Masonry to understand that the older members of Masonry have a lot to teach, and the older members to understand that the younger members may. And if you remove that division of age or experience, whether we're talking physical age or age in Masonry, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you value the other person's opinion and in the content of their character and what they're putting out there that, you might be able to learn from, regardless of which way that interaction is going.
There's kind of like a cool yin and yang flow that goes on. And I think in a healthy lodge, you have this mix of young people coming up with new things they want to try, and old people trying to make sure they're like, well, I've experienced some things that kind of went, it didn't go so well. And then that interplay, as long as it happens in a healthy way where it's not, painful or destructive or like very staunchly hard, it kind of builds this nice system of like, I want to do this. Well, I kind of learned ABC from trying to do that. It's like, well, then can we make an adjustment? Oh, yeah, how about we try it like this? And you can actually come to really good ideas through the interplay between youth and wisdom.
Yep.
Youth being, high energy. They like to break rules. They like to not break like actual Masonic rules, but they like to push the boundaries of what they can do, what has been done, what should be done. And old people being like, I've seen that. I was that guy too. Here's what I learned. And it can kind of interplay. And that's the, if you do that well, you're focusing on the internal and the actual thing you're trying to do, rather than just being like, I'm not going to listen to you because you're old, or I'm not going to listen to you because you're young.
Right.
That can be super helpful.
In other words, guys, what we're saying is remove the external and focus on working together and playing off of each other's skill sets and get along as brothers.
And it kind of even adds to the second part of the sentence is, as you increase in knowledge, you'll improve in social intercourse. That kind of relates to that intercourse you're having between the internal versus the external, whereas, the more you learn, the better, and learn about each other, and the more you learn to look toward the internal, you'll have easier times with these conversations and working with one another.
Right. I think you're not just talking about, as you increase in knowledge, just isn't talking about just knowledge in Masonry and, reading a lot about Masonry or listening to a lot of podcasts or, practically applying Freemasonry. I think it refers to knowledge of your brothers as well and how they operate and what their likes and dislikes are and what your guys' common ground is so that you can speak better with each other. So I think, as you increase in knowledge is talking about multiple things.
And I mean, when you think, what does the word social intercourse means? It's, it's communication between people as they spend time together. And so when you think about that, they go, as you increase in knowledge, you'll improve and you'll have more productive things within the time you spend together. And as you learn from one another, and that can also mean, the social intercourse between the old and the young and all that type of stuff. And I think in general, when it says, as you increase in knowledge, the more you know about Masonry and about each other, the easier it is to have productive conversations too.
Yep.
I mean, our entire podcast is a social intercourse.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And one of these days, this is going to be hard to do, but you and I actually need to find something that we don't agree on.
We're so bad at that.
And have some good social intercourse, civil social intercourse regarding something that we don't see eye to eye on.
We had received that feedback from one of our listeners to try to find something we disagree on so we can have like a really hard-hitting conversation. And we've just been trying to find something so bad, and we just can't. We disagree. Even on things we disagree on, we don't like, it's not even that extreme of a disagreement. It's kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
Maybe one day. If you guys think of anything that you think would be hard-hitting questions you'd like us to ask each other, let us know right away because that could be very fun too. We could get a little controversial with it. The next part of the charge I want to look at, which kind of actually feeds into us talking about social intercourse, is the portion on how to deal with brethren who are potentially skirting their duties or, having offenses to our rules. Can you read that portion for me, please?
Sure. You are not to palliate or aggravate the offenses of your brethren, but in the decision of every trespass against our rules, you are to judge with candor, admonish with friendship, and reprehend with justice.
So this is an interesting one because I think this really sets the tone for what the fraternity is. Because we have lots of rules and regulations. And this one tells us, how are you supposed to deal with these interpersonally between people? Because it's going to come up eventually. And I'd like to point out, so it says you're not to palliate. So what is that how it's pronounced? Palliate.
Palliate?
Palliate. Yeah, palliate. So what palliate means, I had to look this up when I was learning this charge, it means to cover by excuses and apologies. So this is an interesting portion. So it starts by saying, you're not to palliate or aggravate. So that's kind of two ends of the coin. They go, you're not to sweep it under the rug and kind of hide its existence, or you're not supposed to make it worse.
Right. You're not supposed to embellish it and, harp on it and make it worse than it was.
And then it says, but in the decision of every trespass against our rules, you are to judge with candor. What do you think candor is?
Candor's a fun word. That, what's really funny about candor is in my head I know what it means, but if you ask me to define it, I can't tell you.
I pulled up the definition because I actually wanted to see it. It says, the quality of being open and honest in expression and frankness. So it means don't beat around the bush, but also do it in an honest way. So I always took it as candor being not only direct with it, but also doing it in a way that is in good spirits, too.
Right. Don't walk on eggshells, but also don't go throwing stones.
Yeah, treat brothers as brothers, and that's what goes on in the next part. Admonish with friendship. And so I think that's an important thing, because I think that sometimes we get so caught up in our lodge politics, and you're just like, I need to, do something. It's like, just remember we're brothers. And you need, even if someone's in the wrong, it's not helpful to come at it in a rude way, you can still be, I mean, we talk about this all the time, you can still be right and do it in the wrong way.
Well, and I think that this is really boiling down to, saying if you are going to correct or confront someone on something, do it with that brotherly love that we're, supposed to carry in our hearts, and do it in a way where the brother truly understands that what you're doing comes from a place of love, and you're trying to help them out by pointing it out. It's not about chastising somebody. It's about making sure they understood what was done in a frank manner, but also coming from a place of love that they might be able to improve themselves.
And it says then to reprehend with justice. And so justice is an interesting one because that's also one of the cardinal virtues.
Yep.
What do you think that means? What would you say the definition of justice is?
The book definition? You're not going to get a Webster's Dictionary definition out of me.
So
I'm going to say justice, though. Like, in my head, the way I think about it is fairness, that the punishment matches the crime, or you know what I'm getting at there.
And it's so justice is a great philosophical thing to unpack that a lot of people have ideas, but that is exactly what it means, is correctness or fairness or the right amount. So justice can also mean a balanced response too. So, when we look at justice in the symbol for justice is the woman blindfolded holding the scales in one hand and a sword in the other.
Yep.
And I like that symbol because it shows like I'm taking cue of how do we make this right versus wrong, and how to balance that with correct action.
Right.
And
being
sword
blind
for justice is the ability, to not look at the external. Yep. And then the sword of justice is there to say, but you need to be able to make action based on the scales of justice based on there. So when it says reprehend, that means to denounce or to say it's wrong. And they say, like, I would argue that would be to appropriate. I mean, the whole thing is saying to appropriately make sure that you're not sweeping it under the rug, that you're not running away from something that needs to be addressed.
Right.
But to do it in a way that's brotherly. Yep. And to make sure that you're having a fair ask. So, like, if someone's just like, he did something slightly wrong, kick him out of the lodge. And you're like, that's not a just solution.
Right. Well, and, the beginning and the end kind of tie together on this, right? You're not to palliate or aggravate, right? So the aggravate part, you're not supposed to blow out of proportion what they did.
And cause disharmony in the entire lodge. You could make it so much worse.
And then that lines up with the reprehend with justice, because if you're blowing up what the person did into something way bigger than it was, that way bigger event would require a bigger reaction, right? But if it's not actually that big of a deal, then you're not reprehending with justice when you come back and put the hammer down.
Yep, and by not palliating it and putting a Band-Aid on it, you are trying to be direct enough to cause it to stop before it becomes a bigger problem. So there's an aspect of prudence within that.
Right, and I think the whole, if you look at the thing as a whole, don't make it worse, don't hide it, don't overreact.
Yep.
Do it with love, and correct whatever the issue is in whatever the appropriate way to correct it is.
And when you do deal with these situations, and I guarantee many people listening have examples in their head they're thinking of where something has gone, somebody's acted in a certain way, or there's been a problem, and you've seen bad interpersonal dealings with that. And I think it takes a lot of self-reflection before you approach a brother who's in that situation to really think about what is your desired outcome. So, like, if, for example, we say there's a brother who, let's say, what would be a normal infraction that would probably come up?
I don't know. I don't like using examples.
not a real example. I'm saying, like, something that you could see is, like, maybe someone is being inappropriate during state of communication and saying inappropriate things, and it's disruptive and it's kind of making some people uncomfortable.
Okay.
You'd have to have some self-reflection. Is like, so the desired outcome would be that you kind of want that behavior to stop, but you also don't want to embarrass them. So it would be rude to publicly shame them in the lodge. That would be what I would say is an unjust solution.
Right.
So in the sake of brotherly love, you would say, I'm going to take them aside and talk to them one-on-one. but in a way that you're like, I'm not going to suspend him or something over it. I'm just going to have a nice conversation to say, this is how it's making people feel. And, maybe it's a lack of understanding too.
Right. And, so there's a, that's actually a really good one. Now, if it continues to happen, then I think, bringing it up publicly, maybe without calling the person out by name, but bringing it up publicly and, doing a education piece subtly on, what is and isn't appropriate for the lodge.
An education piece on lodge etiquette.
Yeah, something like that.
We should actually do that. There's a whole book on that exists, I think, from the UK on lodge etiquette, like the really old school stuff.
There's a person who's very familiar with Masonic etiquette and lodge etiquette that we both know and that I know listens. And I'm sure he knows I'm talking about him, who we could probably have do that education.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
We could actually do a whole podcast on etiquette.
That would be fun. Actually, it might be fun if he would be willing to have him come in as a guest to do that episode.
It's funny, too, because when you read the old lodge etiquette books, there's some stuff that's so antiquated. They're like, someone will always stand when speaking to another brother in or outside of lodge as a sign of respect. And you're like, oh,
right.
fun.
Right. And I don't know why I'm being so cryptic about it, but, most worshipful Mike DeWolf, if you would ever like to come talk about etiquette, that'd be great.
That'd be very cool. But yeah, I think that kind of unpacks it. I like that I actually know what the word palliate means because I want to use that now to really mess with people. Like, what does that mean? I'm like, you're just trying to palliate this under the rug.
I love, learning new words and then trying to find a way to integrate them into my everyday speech. I don't do it as much anymore as I used to, but I should start doing that again because I'll hear a word and I'll just be like, that's a really good word.
I find your conversation shallow and pedantic.
Wait, does that describe this podcast?
Oh, no, dude, I hope not. So the next section, this one's going to take some time, because actually this is one that I'm super passionate about, can you read the section of the study of the liberal arts? And I actually would ask, can you just read it from the top to the bottom? I think it's worth doing it. I like it enough.
I do.
Just do it for me, Daddy.
I'll read it. I just want to point out the fact that you also have it open over there.
Yeah, but I like to give you jobs.
Well, you can.
All right, let's read it at the same time together.
No, I got it. The study of the liberal arts, that valuable branch of education which tends so effectually to polish and adorn the mind, is earnestly recommended to your consideration, especially the science of geometry, which is established as the basis of our art. Geometry, or masonry, originally synonymous terms, being of a divine and moral nature, is enriched with the most useful knowledge. While it proves wonderful properties of nature, it demonstrates the more important truths of morality.
So what does that mean?
A whole lot of stuff. Go watch Donald Duck in Mathmagic Land.
If you guys haven't heard of Donald Duck in Mathmagic Land, you're going to think, these guys are joking, right? We're asking you to watch a Donald Duck series. No joke. Matt sent this to me when I was a newer Master Mason. It's more or less an adventure where Donald Duck goes through Mathland, which is like a geometry super course. It's like put in a very entertaining way, but it goes through how
talks
music
a lot about
is mathematical. Yep. It talks about the Pythagoreans.
Yep, the golden ratio, all that kind of
architecture,
stuff. Yep.
And all that stuff. It's actually very Masonic. And so what's interesting here is, so the first portion talks about how the liberal arts, which is going to be the quadrivium and the trivium, which are talked about within the Fellowcraft degree, which is grammar, rhetoric, logic. So that's the trivium. And then the quadrivium is arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music, is my understanding. And so this is interesting because, as we know, Preston Webb combination is kind of where our ritual comes from in the U.S., in part. And if I got that wrong, I know a handful of brethren who'll tell me more about it. But more or less, one thing that Preston really liked was the idea that lodges serve a portion of education within the liberal arts and sciences. And so why did he do that? He believed, in a lot of ways that I've read, is that without that basic understanding, and right now in the 21st century, we get this quite a bit because our schooling system provides this for people more successfully than it did when, lodges were kind of writing these rituals, is without having a strong base within these things, you can never truly be free as a Freemason should be, because you can be easily manipulated, because education is the thing that frees your mind.
Right. Very much so. Education, definitely. And education, also a strong education in multiple subjects, allows you to see connections in the world that you might otherwise miss. And if we want to go to the trivium, grammar, rhetoric, logic, right?
Mm-hmm.
All three of those are needed to, A, be able to communicate effectively, B, be able to hold civil conversations,
understand complicated things,
and C, understand complicated things, right?
Like the quadrivium.
Right. So grammar, rhetoric, and logic are very important. Now, is my grammar always the best? No. I try. It's not great. Are we all guilty of logical fallacies? Yeah. All the time. But mastering or attempting to master those skills will allow you to improve in social intercourse.
Oh, yeah. And it's also like, we take it for granted because even if we're quote-unquote bad at grammar, we're really not compared to what it used to be. Like, you can hear people who are really bad at grammar. It's almost hard to understand what they're trying to explain to you sometimes. Because you're trying to, so when you're using grammar well, you're basically taking your thoughts and putting them into someone else's brain through communicating. And the better you are at doing that, the more accurate they're able to understand what you're thinking. And it takes some skill in grammar and then in rhetoric to understand how to make logical arguments and understand logical arguments so that you can start to unlock the quadrivium. And so it kind of builds upon itself, which is why sometimes it's listed on like a staircase or something. And so to unlock geometry, you need to first know arithmetic. And arithmetic is just logic. You know what I mean? You're adding this plus this times this, etc. Right,
until you get into, dividing by zero and calculus, and then it all goes out the window for me.
Yep, and then that allows you to unlock geometry, which is just math in space. It's in place.
It's applied mathematics.
Yep, and then more complicated geometry is astronomy, because now you're geometrizing the heavens. And then you forget that music is actually mathematics, because each tone is another mathematic portion of another note, so they kind of stack up. Mathmagic Land explains this perfectly. I'm going to have a hard time doing it. But if you think about it, rhythm and stuff like that is also mathematical. And so what it's trying to teach, and I think Masonry's always taught, is we like to say that God is geometrizing and that the world is just numbers. Or numbers are a way to quantify the world, I guess you could say.
Right.
And it points out specifically that Masons should focus on geometry and that there's an aspect of geometry that's moral. What do you think that means?
You're going to make me go down that road when I was just going to talk about it. I want to go back and touch on one point real quick before we get to that. The point I wanted to touch on when we're saying, God or the creator, or however you want to refer to that deity, is geometrizing. It goes to the fact that the golden ratio is found in so many different places in nature, and that number ties a whole lot of stuff together, which goes back for me to what we're talking about with the more you know about these topics, the more you can understand how the world is connected. You can understand that you appreciate that piece of architecture over there because it happens to follow the golden ratio, which is also the same reason you appreciate a flower that also follows the golden ratio for its layout. And when you start seeing all that stuff in different places, you begin to realize that
there's an order to things.
Yep, exactly.
And so when they say, why would we think that morality is geometric? It's because we're saying there is a right and a wrong, and it's mathematical. And if you decide something that's wrong can be justified as correct, that's not a correct equation because you're finding a way to circumnavigate the logic. And so in a Masonic belief, you'd say, if you apply that, it's encouraging you to live in balance and harmony, just like mathematics does. And so when you think about it, it's like, we always say, you build a building with geometry, we're building ourselves. So It kind of all mixes into the same thing. And so if geometry is considered a universal language, then there is a universal morality that we should attempt to locate between right and wrong. So it's that there are some universal moral truths that are just as absolute as geometry, is what I would argue they're kind of trying to say.
And we're still not going to disagree because I couldn't put that any better.
And so it's interesting, too. So when you're sitting here going, man, how do I get better at Masonry? I started at one point being like, I don't know, what do I want to read? I've been reading a lot of Masonic books. I need like a palate cleanser. And you know what the best palate cleanser is? A math book. I'm joking kind of because it's actually very dry. But so I was studying recently a book on sacred geometry and kind of the symbolic understanding of that mathematics. And what is absolutely mind-blowing is how immediately the symbolism within Masonry starts to unlock, because within our rituals, they're clearly referencing 3 always symbolizes divinity, okay?
Right.
And so it's everywhere. You go, okay. And that's like, it's a triangle, okay? And so actually when you start studying geometry, they literally just said, this is really important. And you go, how do I understand our ritual more? It's like, study geometry, and it's going to unlock way more information that's kind of encoded within our ritual. Right,
exactly. I do. I'm kind of getting tired of agreeing with you. You put that very well, though, and I don't really see a way I can tack on to it. So
we might have to do an episode on sacred geometry. There's this really cool book that I have that goes from the symbolic value and how it's symbolized in art from the numbers 1 through 10.
Ooh.
And you actually, when you get the book, you should also, it asks you to buy a ruler and a compass. So you sit there doing little geometry. I'm like, look at, I'm using my little square and compass. And you're doing it on a map. And it kind of explains the emanation through mathematics, which kind of feeds into that. And it's super important. And I think if anyone's trying to find a new way to grow as Masons, the study of those liberal arts and sciences, if you're like, hey, I just don't want to read Masonic books all the time, pick up a book on grammar, learn a little bit of the basics of astronomy, because it's a super fulfilling pursuit. And it actually is like, I think it's helpful to remind Masons that we should be life learners.
Right. And it's important for anyone, even outside of Masonry. But yeah, as a Mason, you're kind of charged with being a learner for the rest of your life. But, learning comes in many different ways. Yeah, okay, you might not be a book person. But we have this wonderful thing now called YouTube. There's so much information out there, and there's podcasts about math and all sorts of different subjects. I mean, in geometry, you can find this stuff all over the place. The last time I actually tried to study geometry, I was in high school.
Yep.
And it would be really fun to kind of revisit it and see how it ties into my life. Not to go back to talking about hunting again, but the Pythagorean theorem, when I used to sit in a tree, is something that I would use all the time, because I was X number of feet in the air, and at X number of yards, the deer would be, or at X, Y number of yards away, the deer would actually be Z number of yards away, because I actually had to calculate the hypotenuse before I had a line of sight rangefinder. Because if that deer could be 20 yards from the base of the tree, but my relation up in the tree to where that deer is changes that distance.
And, it's funny because the more you work that geometry brain, the more you can see it in action, too. And what's fun about, as an adult, going back and doing studying is you realize that when you're in school, a lot of the time you're like, I don't want to do this, and you have to. But it's actually, you'll find it's actually more fun when you're like, I want to do this because I want to do it. And you're like, so it's actually not as... A lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth from school because they're like, because you might not always be passionate about that subject at the moment. But when you come back to it as an adult, it's actually a different sensation because you're doing it because you want to. And it's more fun that way. And honestly, it can really well round you and polish and adorn one's mind.
Ooh, going back to referencing another part of the charge. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about on this one? I agree with you. I feel like we should do a separate episode on sacred geometry, but I also feel like that episode would require more preparation than we typically do for these.
We'd actually have to read a book, probably. I mean, I guess the last part of the charge that comes into play that I think is basically kind of locking in a portion of the Fellowcraft degree itself, where it basically says, where did I put my thing? Your past behavior and regular deportment have merited the honor which we have now conferred, and in your new character it is expected that you will conform to the principles of the fraternity by steadily persevering in the practice of every commendable virtue. So this, I think, is just interesting. It kind of is a sentence that I think is a little wordy, and it's kind of like a little pat on the back, but the ending part where it says, you are expected to conform to the principles of the fraternity by steadily persevering at the practice of every commendable virtue. That is saying that the principles of the fraternity are in alignment with the commendable virtues. And so if you're thinking about that mathematically, they're saying this is the same as that. So if you want to do a good job at ascribing to be a Mason, you need to use prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Which, if you think about this, these things are not always named, but they're sprinkled within our ritual. Temperance, circumscribing the passions. Fortitude, being, stick-to-itness, industrious. Justice, we just talked about that earlier, being just and fair. And prudence is, having practical wisdom and sound judgment. So that could also mean having good, polished minds that can make good decisions because they're well-informed.
Sounds like a good 4 episodes right there.
Yep. I know some good books on the cardinal virtues, but they're fun because they were identified. You're basically saying Masonry as a whole is trying to say that Masonry and morality are the same thing. So to be a Mason, you need to be moral, and that there is no distinction between the two because geometry is Masonry and Masonry is morality.
Yep.
And geometry. It's a triangle again. Oh no, we're going into math.
Oh no. All right. I think we gave them enough.
Yeah, we gave them enough. But so, once again, check out Donald Duck Goes to Mathmagic Land. That's what we're going to name the episode. It's going to be called Andrew Matt Go to Mathmagic Land. We'll think about it. But so either way, check it out. Let us know your thoughts. We'll probably post it on Facebook too on the page when we release this episode. So you can check it out.
I would say save that title for when we do the deep drive on sacred geometry.
That's a fun idea.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool.
Let's do some news.
Let's hit up some news. All right, let's get into some news. All right, music played. Anywho, so let's see what's going on. District 2 actually had a very large turnout for their fall district meeting. On October 5th, they went to the Phoenix Grill and Event Center in Baldwin, which had more than 80 Masons attend along with guests. The evening was very successful. They actually had some fantastic food, it sounds like, and they were able to... Karen Gunderson spoke of her involvement at the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Gracie Kalbeck, the daughter of the District 2 representative David Kalbeck, gave a first-hand presentation on the Wish Guarantee. It was truly inspiring. They also were able to present through District Deputy Bryce Fransway, the District Mason of the Year, which went to... The District Masons of the Year are Brother Dan Solfield of River Falls, number 106, and Rick Wayne, awarded posthumously for his long history of exemplary service to the craft. So great job, brethren. And it sounds like they had a wonderful night out there, and they were doing some good work up there in District 2. Oh, wait, you know what? They were also, hold on, this is important. Following the meal, they actually presented 18, not 1, not 5, 18 go bags, which contained the defibrillators and fire suppression tools, which were given out to the State Patrol.
Excellent. Gotta love those go bags that we're doing. All right, another little piece of news that we had is Reedsburg Lodge had their annual Shed Lodge back on September 30th. I know this is an event I found out about a few years ago, and I've been dying to go to it. It just hasn't worked out with my calendar yet. Basically, they get a shed available up there for afternoon of blue jeans, Masonic fellowship, and great food. Sounds like they had barbecued ribs, fixin', and dessert this year. There was a presentation done on the history of the Ringling Brothers and their circuses.
Oh, that's cool.
Seeing that the Ringling Brothers were members of Baraboo Lodge, it's Masonically relevant. And then it sounds like Most Worshipful Grandmaster Dave Ritchie was up there and enjoying fellowship with everybody, and it just sounds like it's a really good time of people hanging out in a really relaxed setting. Some of that fellowship you and I always talk about.
Yep.
So.
Oh, it's awesome. I think it's nice that we're getting more and more of these like staple events around the state that are just those you can't miss type of events.
Right. Yep. And that was actually in the news article about it too. Is that it's becoming a can't miss event.
So perfect.
It's funny that you said that.
Speaking of events, what events we got coming up?
All right. So on November 11th, Baraboo Lodge number 34 is having their 7th annual free chili dinner, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. to support the Wisconsin Badger Honor Flight. So I'm sure they're taking donations to the Badger Honor Flight at it. That sounds like a pretty slick event. On November 12th is the first annual Freeze Fest. H.L. Palmer Lodge will be putting on a Freeze Fest. It's teams of 4, and basically you gotta sit in a bunch of cold water for as long as you can, and the longer you sit there, the more money your lodge has to give to the Dyslexia Center. So if you're interested, please look up H.L. Palmer Lodge and get more information on that.
Get your teams of 4 put together.
Get them put together. This is a unique event, and I love the idea, and I actually kind of love that it got moved to November because it makes it seem more polar plungy.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited for that one, and it's like a minute from my house, so I'm not far away from being able to warm up.
Yeah, I'm going to text some of our brethren after this to see if we can get a team together.
And then from 11:13 to 11:18, the Zora Shriners Festival of Trees is going on at the Sparta Masonic Center, Monday through Friday from 4 to 8 p.m., Saturday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Festival of Trees, which AAA also does down here, is an awesome event. Go try to get yourself a really cool, fully decorated tree with some like gifts and stuff under it. Go buy some raffle tickets. It's great. It's great. And take the kids to see all the trees all decorated up. And then the last one for me, I'll kick it over to Andrew after this so you guys don't have to listen to me talk anymore, is on November 15th, Parade du Chien Lodge number 8 is doing their annual deer camp night. Meals at 6:30 p.m., followed by a program. Wear your finest camouflage or blaze orange, or mix them together, because that's what I would do. Open to friends and family, so bring some people with you, even, or some prospective members. Maybe it's something that'll bring some members into the fraternity.
Yep, and that's over at Parade du Chien Masonic Center. Excuse me. All right, on November 18th, Silas Shepherd Lodge of Research number 1843 is having their winter meeting and installation. It's going to be at 9 a.m. It's going to have coffee and carbs, and the meeting is then going to be at 10 a.m., and that's at Lake County Freemasons Masonic Center, which is in on Dousman Road in Oconomowoc. Please RSVP for this event via the Our Lodge page, or you can reach out to their email at silas.shepherd1843@gmail.com. On November 23rd, Reedsburg Lodge number 76 is having their 26th annual Masonic Senior Citizens Thanksgiving Dinner. This is going to be at the Reedsburg United Methodist Church from noon to 1 p.m. And you're able to get carry-out and delivery only Thanksgiving food. So if you're interested in that, you can call or text them to get reservations. You can find their information by looking up Reedsburg Lodge number 76 info. It's also on Our Lodge, and it delivers within the Reedsburg city limits only. Additionally, speaking of the Festival of Trees, the AAA Shrine is doing that as well, and that is going to be running from November 18th through 25th, closed on Thanksgiving. And so more or less during the So if it's on November 18th and 19th, that's going to be from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can find their hours specifically on the tripleshrine.com/festival. But more or less, it's a great event to go out to. You're able to look at those trees, you can win prizes, help raise money for the Shriner hospitals. It's just a really great, fun place to go for a little bit of Christmas action. It's pretty awesome. Then we have the Burlington Lodge is doing their Gentleman's Night. So they're going to be doing a beer tasting. It's open to anyone who's over the age of 21. Come on out and hang out. It's a nice social event if you're in the Burlington area. It's nice to just meet the guys and hang out. It's a great time. I've gone myself. It's a lot of fun. And then finally, Lake Lodge 189 on December 16th is having their Breakfast with Santa event. And this is going to be my first event as a junior warden who has to make pancakes. This is what we call the junior warden initiation.
Well, potentially your first event as junior warden. We'll see how elections go tonight, because the day this airs is the day of elections.
Please bail me out. This event is intense. It's a really great event. We have Santa Claus there, Brother Santa, and we have a lot of fun. It's it's free and open to the public. Anyone can come. So yeah, if you're looking for something to do that gives you the Christmas spirit, that'll be going on December 16th.
Yep, and we had really good community turnout last year. I'm really excited for it again this year. It's really starting to pick up momentum as a Bayview event, or St. Francis event, whatever you want to call it.
Town of Lake.
Town of Lake.
Tippecanoe. So yeah, anyways, that would wrap up our events for now, but thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
We'd love to hear from you. timeforfellowship@gmail.com, or hit us up on any of our socials.
Sounds good. See you later, guys.
Have a great one.